Heyo, I'm Christy Rocha, podcast host and content creator, and I am thrilled to welcome you to the Inner Edit. This podcast is all about us, the creators, the storytellers, the visionaries, navigating the ever-changing online world. We are in this together, facing challenges unique to our craft, like burnout, setting boundaries, dealing with negativity, and that oh-so-familiar imposter syndrome. Join me as I chat with fellow creators, therapists, and coaches to explore collaborations, making connections, diving into creating conscious content, figuring out how to maximize our content output, and discovering that mindset magic that keeps us going. Whether you're a content creator seeking resources or just curious about the behind-the-scenes world of digital creators, the Inner Edit is your resource for personal and professional growth in the digital world. We're all going through the same things, so let's talk about it. Hit that subscribe button and welcome to the Inner Edit. Hello. Welcome back to the Inner Edit. I am so excited today. I'm joined by Dr. Mariel Buque. She is a trauma-informed psychologist, professor, and sound bath meditation healer. She is also the author of Break the Cycle, a guide to healing intergenerational trauma. Dr. Mariel works as a holistic psychologist, infusing practices essential to our mental well-being, like meditation and breathwork, into her therapeutic process and protocol. She's also a longtime content creator. You probably recognize her from TikTok or Instagram, where she is most visible. I have to say, I am honored to have her on, not only because of her impressive resume appearing on Good Morning America and Today, and being featured in magazines like Allure and Glamour, just to name a few, but also because of her respected online presence and loyal community of followers. And I just know she's going to be the positive light for you that she was for me when I had this conversation. So today we talk about different platforms and choosing the ones that make us feel good as opposed to making us feel dreadful. We touch on creator burnout, how to nurture our online communities, and so much more. Here she is. Hey, Dr. Mariel. So nice to meet you in person. Oh my gosh, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's such a joy to be with you. I'm excited to chat.
It is like, is it bizarre that I say this? I'm sure it is, but it's like having a celebrity here. Like
Mhm.
when you see someone so often online and then here they are, it's like, oh my God, in my office.
It's so humbling. It's really nice that people, are so appreciative of, what I put out there. So thank you for being in that bucket of people that show me appreciation. Thank you.
Well, it's a joy. And one of the notes that I had written down, I didn't have a question. I just had it in like big letters. That is something that just radiates from your account is joy. And I don't know, but I think part of it is like just your incredible use of color, the yellow and the green and but you truly just like radiate joy. And you're not always talking about joyous things. Like, is that who you are? Is that intentional? Like, how do you do that?
Uh, well, thank you for seeing all of that in me. And I do hold a lot of intention around, in particular, like groundedness. Like I want to feel as grounded as I can be on a day-to-day basis. My mission is to help others feel grounded, and so like everything that I choose is specifically curated with that goal in mind. And I'm excited that joy comes out of it. I also love humor. Humor used to actually be my psychological defense when I just didn't know what are the defenses to use that were more adaptive. And it's my family's collective psychological defense as well. But now humor is just something that I infuse into my work because I also want to make it palatable and digestible because it's very dark and heavy content. And I don't want people to feel like it's something that they can touch. I want them to feel like they can approach the work and that it doesn't have to feel like this work that pushes them into the pit of their existential dread.
Yeah, totally. Okay. And so you've been with an online presence for several years now. Take me back. Tell me a little bit about the backstory of how you got started with an online presence. I always find it interesting to learn how someone in the mental health space, particularly licensed and doctorate and all the things, kind of makes that jump because it's not easy to do. So if you wouldn't mind, tell me a little bit about the backstory there.
Yeah, you're right, it's not. And I actually did it in a very sneaky way. Like, and what I mean by that, I was actually a student when I first started, and I was still in my doctoral program. And the reason why I say sneaky is because I just didn't want my professors to find out that I was putting out mental health content on the internet, because it was just so frowned upon. And it, there were a lot of different dialogues about how should therapists show up in these spaces and what is ethical and what if a client finds you and things like that. And so, but I really felt like this tremendous push in the direction of getting the information out there, because I kept thinking, okay, well, we have all this wealth of information about a host of different kinds of mental ailments, and the general public is not being privy to this. Why? There were only a handful, and I mean really a handful of us
Yeah.
that were doing that work back then. And I remember feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome because I was still a student and most of the people that were doing it were already licensed. But I was like, but I have key information that is so critical and I don't see anyone covering it. I don't see anyone talking very explicitly about trauma, and it's not really fair. I
Mm.
wanted to increase access, and so this was the way that I thought, well, maybe I could do it this way.
Did you were still a student, but did you have clients? Like, were you at the point where you were seeing, because I know there's that point in the time where you
Yeah.
have to be shadowed and
Hmm.
whatnot. Forgive me, I'm not as like in it on the thing, but I know that there is that point. And so I'm asking because it occurs to me that it might have actually been the blessing that you started in school because you didn't have to like separate what was coming from clients and keeping that personal, or did you? Like, am I speaking out of turn? Do you know what I'm asking you?
No,
Just
yeah, I
all
do.
over that place with
And I
that one.
was No, I understand it, completely. And it was actually part of the conundrum, because yes, I was already in the part of my clinical training where I was seeing
That's the
my
word. Thank you.
clients. Yeah. And I was under supervision, and it was like this thing where I was like, "Wow, I don't really want them to find out." But actually, a part of the sneakiness was that I actually started off with this company that I called cultural therapy. And it was like therapy, that infuses activism.
Hmm,
And that's the actual name under which I started on social media many years ago. And what I did in order to kind of almost like help my professors and supervisors buy into the idea of me being on social media was that I, including Tracy Stein, who we've talked about having been on this podcast, I actually had them uh, agree to being advisors of my company. So, like the general advisors. And so I was
interesting.
like, okay, well, you bought into this, and it is, a way to increase access. So we're in this together, right?
That's genius. Really. That's so smart.
It's so sneaky.
It's smart though. It's smart. So knowing what you know now and given your experience in the sneakiness, if there are therapists out there who want to make this transition to putting content out there, because I think you're right. I think so many therapists I interview, it is about access. It is about transparency, and it is about advocacy for the mental health space. What advice would you give if someone is sitting there struggling with that gray area of the ethics of being a mental health professional and being online?
Well, I think across the board, there are mental wellness clinicians and healers, and also other professionals that are in the healing space, including physicians, that are understanding the kind of world that we exist in, and one in which not only is authenticity a really critical part of care, but we are in a world where authenticity is almost kind of desired above this idea of the blank slated therapist that nobody knows anything about.
Mhm.
And it actually promotes, and especially, for communities of color, as we've seen in multiple studies, it does actually help to promote a connection to the healer, and it also helps to promote the healing in a way that is very important for communities that are used to disclosure and are used to authenticity and self-expression in the people that they interact with, and especially their healers. So I would, if it feels like I'm stuck in an ethical conundrum, remember that a part of ethic is to engage in the work in a way that helps the people that you're serving to feel heard, seen, and connected to you.
Mhm.
So that's a way in which I, very explicitly rationalize it, because I'm intentional about the fact that that rationalization is rooted in something. It's not just me trying to make myself feel better about showing
Right.
up in these spaces. It's that in reality, people feel a deeper connection to us when we can say, "Hey, I'm superhuman, super flawed. I mess up. I do all these things. These are my kids." Like all the things, and if it deepens the work even.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing is just really tapping into your why. Knowing your
Mm,
why, and it's reminding me of Maddie Spear recently shared a lot of what it boils down for her is just is she kind of brings over what she does in the actual therapy room of just do no harm. If
mm.
you're coming from a good place and like you said, you're intentional about it with the thought of do no harm, right? Yeah, you're increasing visibility and and access and all of the fabulous things that we really need right now because it's hard for anyone to go and seek therapy. Like, it just shouldn't be as hard as it is. Like,
It
it's so
is.
infuriating.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's a whole the whole entire system is broken and has been for some time, and it's broken on multiple angles, right? Like it's situated in just capitalism. It is not situated in real healing for people,
Mhm.
and you know, it also has like a lot of broken elements. Like the Mental Health Parity Act was supposed to help absolve some of that cost that was like burdening the clients.
Mm.
And it never really did that task. That's why a lot of people in the mental health arena are still providing services out of network. We're still, having to have really high fees that are basically comparable to the fees that you would pay for any other specialty,
Right.
but because the services aren't necessarily covered to the extent that they are for other kind of specialties, and it makes it so that we're just burdening the people that are in pain.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, touching on that as far as, um, I think that I think there just also still has a lot to do with the stigma and the misunderstandings about mental health that we still have throughout much of our society. I think it's getting better. I also connect that to your work as a creator. Like, I think that there's still a lot of misunderstanding about what it takes to be a content creator. Like, it must be quote unquote so easy. Oh, how lucky, quote unquote, that you can just make videos with your tea and talk to people. Like, that must be so nice and so pleasant all the time. And it's a ton of work that goes into creating. Do you find like, you can hear that irritates me. Like, are you
Hmm.
impacted by that? Do you feel that in your work, in your world?
Yeah, to be honest, to be 100% real about it, most of the content that I have had to basically create in the recent months to maybe like years, I haven't had a lot of fun doing it. Like I actually
Mm,
procrastinate a lot. I've been burnt out for 5 months last year. Um, I don't enjoy it as much as I used to. And in part, it's because we're in a different landscape from when it comes to content creation. These social media machines have actually caught on to the fact that a lot of people want to do this work, and so they've like messed up their algorithms, making it kind of almost like a psychological experiment of like who is willing to do the most work to be most visible. And it's very anti wellness.
Yeah.
And as a result, like for any of us who have, let's say, like, I have a book coming out. I have friends who have like therapy card decks or, like just a host of different
Courses or anything, right?
courses,
Yeah.
workshops, healing practices that have like, whether it's an in-person or a virtual angle, and people are just trying to get the healing work out there. But there is so much of an influencer kind of agenda but the agenda is like kind of almost anti-influencer. It's like, to what extent can we get this person to just work a lot and get and flourish our platform? And that makes it really hard to sit with these spaces. I have a 2024, um it's going to be kind of like, I don't know, some sort of a plan to migrate to the platforms that I think are more centered on healing, and transition from the ones that I feel like are just kind of buying into that algorithmic kind of like chaos, because it can be very exhausting, and it has been.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I've heard it described now more recently as a machine, like it's a machine that someone up there just keep doesn't turn off. And like you said it so well, so I'll leave it at that. But um curious about migrating to the platforms that you feel most aligned with. That sounds simple, it sounds easy, it sounds lovely, but it's hard. It's hard knowing, I think, that you might be what I'm getting at is it takes courage to do that because those platforms that you might be migrating off of might be the big ones, right? So I don't know, talk me through that a little bit, that decision, like, does that come easy to you? Are you struggling with it? Are you are okay if that means maybe your relevancy goes down or your follower count goes down? Like, does any of that matter to you at this point? And how do you marry the idea that, right, like, you're putting yourself out there for public consumption for a reason to help, to do all these things, but maybe in making it more aligned, you're moving away from the bigger spotlights? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the hardest
Mhm.
part. It's because, I want my work to be seen. Of course, I believe in my work and I want it to reach the right hands. And it's just it's kind of like a hamster wheel, and it's like, when do you hop off, right? So
Yeah.
I do believe that there is a stark difference between the platforms where I have large prominence and the ones that I do not. Like, I have dedicated community members that are there, and that's
Mhm.
the biggest part of what makes it hard. Like, I don't want to abandon them.
Yeah.
And at some point in time, you kind of have to like gauge like what feels good to my soul,
Yeah.
what feels good to um, my message. Where is my message well received? Like those kinds of things, So like there are some apps where I turn them on, and instantly I feel a certain feeling.
Mm.
And some of those feelings are like, oh my goodness, it's so fun being here, or wow, that is wild, I'm so enlightened. And it's like the feelings that I desire when I go into these apps.
Yeah.
And then there are some that I'm like, "Ugh, I gotta hop on, because I have to get this message out."
Right. Right. Yeah.
I don't want to live my life like that, like it's a life is very short. And
Yeah.
so like I've already dedicated almost 10 years. Like, I feel like to be dedicating more, there has to be like a really good reason.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm
Mhm.
I'm just hearing a lot of self-awareness, right? And I think when we are tapping into that aspect of it, even though it may be hard, it just is going to feel so right that we can't help it, right? Like we've all had those moments, or I'll speak for myself. We've had those moments where something feels really hard. I'm in the weeds on it. It gets muddy. But when I have that moment of clarity of just, you know what, this is just so aligned with who I am, or the awareness of, like you said, logging onto an app and feeling a certain way and noticing that feeling, it becomes hard to ignore. And the rest of the noise goes away.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to be frank, with these platforms, like, um, one thing that I have learned, there are people who are, you know, the algorithm may favor them, or people may gravitate towards their work across platforms. I have studied a lot of my colleagues in my own work as well. And there isn't a lot of people, unless they have like this really, really powerful, prominent name, that really can achieve that, in a
Mm,
way that is like easy and explicit. Like they hop on a platform and all of a sudden they're like in the millions of followers because they're Beyonce, right? Like, and
yeah.
so like, but what I have found in terms of the rest of us, right, is that when you dedicate yourself to a platform, or let's say up to three, you study the platform, you get to know it well, you get to know who the people that are part of your community on that platform, who they are, what they desire to hear from you, and you really study that and then take action with that in mind. I feel like that drives a better outcome than scattering yourself across every single one that's out there. And I've done that. There have been like baby platforms that have surfaced, and I'm like, let me hop on and be like an early influencer here. And it just like spreads you thin.
Yeah.
And also like,
Mm,
you know, um, my message, it has humor infused within it. My message isn't well received in some platforms because of that, because
mhm.
it's humor with trauma. On others, people are like, give me more. I need
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, you know, I want to go back to what you were saying about your community and, the concern over, I don't want to abandon people. Like, this is something I talk about a lot. Like, the level of responsibility a creator feels to the platform, to the account, to the community. Um, it can be heavy at times. Do you feel like the community that you have on whichever platform you feel like most connected to, you don't even have to say which one it is, but just think of that one. How did you really cultivate that? Like, I hear from so many creators that they feel lonely, that they're not really sure who's out there, who's maybe a video goes viral, but it's like people that aren't really their audience, so nobody sticks around. Like, going back, how did you do anything in particular to really nurture and cultivate what is now like a solid community for you?
I started showing up more authentically. Like
Mm,
before, I was like working off of this valence of what I believed people wanted me to be. Um, and to be frank, like I have a lot of softness and tenderness to me, but some of it isn't that,
mm,
like, and I'm just like a whole, like, well-rounded human, if you may, that has all of her complexities. And I'm willing to show up with all of those, and not just be kind of like a one-dimensional version of myself that I think might be palatable to people, because that's
mm.
also like just self-prescribed. Like I think that people
Yeah,
are not the ones imposing that on me.
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And so my first big, big, big blow up was TikTok. And on TikTok, I went all the way up to 400K within like 3 days,
Whoa.
followers. Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, it was wild. I was
That
like,
is
what is
nuts.
this? I know.
Yeah.
I just kept looking at the numbers, and like
Is this
every,
real?
I know, every hour it was like 1,000, 1,000, 1,000 followers.
Oh my gosh.
I know. And, and what I realized within that community is that people started almost kind of being advocates for me, or speaking on my behalf. Like people would copy me on other people's, maybe somebody was crying about some trauma, and they would like at me and say, Dr. Mariel, what do you think about this?
Oh.
And when it came to tea therapy, people would be like, I'll see you at the next session. I'll probably
Oh,
bring that back because it was so cute. I love that so
that's
much. People,
awesome.
see you next sessions. Okay, see you next session.
Yeah.
Um, and also people were like, if anybody were to like kind of like replicate the work, they would be like, oh no, that's Dr. Mariel's area. So it was a very like loyal community, and it continues to be.
Wow.
On
Yeah.
Instagram, I think I get a different feel. I get some element of loyalty, but it's the loyalty is like, thank you for being here, and I'm gonna stick around because I appreciate the content you're producing. That's
Mm-hmm.
the vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And so those are my major platforms, those two, and that's where I've seen a lot of and especially when I see people outside, um, I'll go get a coffee or I'll go to workshops or wherever, and people be like, your tea, it's always the tea, your tea
Yeah.
sessions, um, and they're always like talking about how relatable the content feels. So I think both platforms have been like reflective of that. But I also really, I personally, even though I have not explored it until recently, I personally love LinkedIn.
Mm.
Like I personally feel I feel very intellectually stimulated there. I feel
Mm.
like I really like just opening the app. And so when it comes to like me as a consumer, I really like to be there.
Mm.
And that's something that, because I've been so hyper focused on, well, what can I offer others and not, well, what do I feel good? I've been like
Mm.
on Instagram and TikTok primarily. I tried YouTube and it exhausted me, it burnt me out. I
Yeah.
am not going back there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good to know though, right? Like
Yeah.
just check it off the list. Like done.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It requires a lot. It requires a full-blown team to really like get YouTube working in a way that's sustainable. And to be frank, I feel like I love the moments when I'm doing nothing.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
worked my behind off. Like I'm exhausted, and
Yeah.
I went there yesterday. I was taking pictures around my house of, I don't know if you could see, but, and I'm sure people that are listening probably can't, right? But the soft lights like in my
Mm.
home, I
Mm-hmm.
was taking pictures of the soft lights in my home. That's literally what I was doing. Like it's it's just such a, just a moment, just to
Yeah.
just to be with myself and the silence of my home, and the gentleness of the sun, peeking into the window shades. Like that's
Yeah.
what I want to do in between the meetings that I have to hold, the sessions that I have to, like, I want to be able to experience softness, not to be stressing over a platform. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that is coming to my mind, and I'm wondering what you think about this. When, you know, you were saying you've worked your behind off and on a bunch of different platforms, trying out YouTube, stick like Instagram, TikTok, all of them. Now that you've established a significant online presence, it feels easier to me, and those aren't the right words, but for the sake of time, it feels easier to me to be able to minimize those platforms and really shift them, as you've been saying, like migrate to the ones that feel better. Then it might feel to someone who's just starting out and maybe has that fear of, if I'm not everywhere, where is my relevancy? And so
Mm.
what do you think about that? Do you think that someone just starting out is better off choosing the ones from the get-go that really just feel good and just grind it out and see what happens? Or do you think it is worth, like you've done, kind of exploring all the different ones, like sprinkling a little bit everywhere, um, and then fine tuning it? Like, what do you think is a course of action as far as like all these platforms go and then like dwindling them down, so to speak?
I do believe that that is a beautiful, like, kind of first way to approach the process. It's about going into the platforms, spreading your message in the ways that you desire to spread them. For some people, they feel a greater comfort with static images. Some people feel greater comfort with expressing in video form.
Mm-hmm.
And identifying, one, how the community that you're building is responding to the message, and two, how you are feeling. We often forget how the creator is feeling in the process. Like,
Yeah.
that matters too, because that feeling is going to be with you for years.
Right.
And so it's something that those of us that just came onto this game years ago and not really like thinking about, well, how do I feel in this platform? We were just trying to, kind of get the word out. We didn't take those pauses.
Mm.
I desire those pauses for myself now. I desire to be very intentional about, what helps me to feel grounded and well. But I also know that there are specific ways in which I show up in the work that people respond to better than others. Unfortunately for me, people respond to my face on video more than anything. And I don't like to overproduce because I still have to, do advocacy work. I still have to ensure that I'm supervising students. I'm taking the time to get the healing work out there in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
And
Writing
I'm
books.
writing books,
Yeah. Right.
speaking engagements, like, and I'm flying. When there's a week I'm not flying somewhere, I'm so happy that I get to be home.
Mm.
And because it's the jet lag and it's the airport, it's just
Yeah.
working from airports. It's a lot. So I do appreciate not having to show my face like always on a video that needs to be edited, that needs to then be,
Yeah.
reviewed by me, and then, then posted, and then the caption, the comments need to be moderated so people, don't experience like profound triggers on my platform, because I'm very explicit about that. So things that all that matter. And, that means that what responds best in my platform is for me to provide daily videos, but I don't have the capacity anymore.
Mm.
So my, what I think I take that into consideration with all the other things. Like, well, I can produce 1 or 2 videos a week
Mm.
and offer, quality. Um, and I can take into consideration what people are telling me is pertinent in their lives. Like this week, it may be that, they are understanding the impact of sibling rivalry on their mental health. Like maybe that's a thing that I need to be focused on.
Mm.
Whereas like next week, the holiday season is starting and people are like really tender about the holidays. So maybe that's an area that I need to focus on. But there's quality content going out regardless, rather than hyper producing
Yeah.
and losing the depth of the message.
Yeah.
So, I've been studying my platform for years, and I think that that's the thing, is like, we can scatter ourselves throughout, do a bit of a test run, do a quarter or two of like, well, how does this message relay in these different platforms? And then come back to the drawing table and say, okay, I feel good here, and also community is responsive here.
Mm-hmm.
These are the places where my message is probably best suited.
Yeah. And I'm sure you would agree, but I think what also came to mind as you were talking is a creator might believe that a certain platform will increase visibility and whatnot, but if if you're actually not experiencing joy doing it, the viewers are going to know. The viewers are going to see it in your content and on your face if it's your face. And I think that's the reminder for me is if I really I can't pressure myself into being on a platform that I don't feel good on because it's not going to be received anyway. Like the people are going to see it on my face if I'm like, yeah, I'm here because I just have to be, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I now have hired a team, right? So I work with other people who keep my work afloat and are incredible in doing so. And I have a brand manager who's also in charge of a lot of the ins and outs of social media. And she tells me actually when
Mm.
she notices that I have a different energy level. Like she'll be like, I can tell we're heading in the direction of burnout. I see it in your energy. It's
Awesome.
being reflective in the videos, and so she gives me a little bit of a heads up because she's been through the years of ebbs and flows with me of like knowing when my work looks like my joy and when my work looks like my heaviness, right? And I even look like 2021, I think it was specifically on IG. 2021, the end of 2021, the videos were like, even as I think about it, I smile. And even when I see them, I smile because they were high quality, they were fun to make, fun to edit, and I was just like really in a flow. But that was like right before a lot of these algorithmic like issues started kicking in, right? And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, and I remember even like in that season, I would have like 300-400 comments in a post. Um, and of course, for many of us, that's dwindled and that's, become very different. But even those comments were like very enlivening because people would say things and we would just be in a flow.
Hmm.
But I remember, yeah, it was also my energy. Like the energy was very vibrant in that season. And like now I'm just like, oh, I'm so exhausted. I
Yeah.
just want to, I just want, especially now the world is so on fire. Like I just want us to heal. How can I get that message around healing out there in a way that really reaches? And that's why like there's a lot of like reconfiguration that's happening on my end.
Okay. Okay. And, touching on the reconfiguration, you read your bio and you're everywhere, you're doing everything. You had a podcast, you've got the book, which we'll talk about again later. But you've been on The Real, Good Morning America, Today Show. You've had a lot of opportunity. What is your thought process behind when you say no to opportunities and when you say yes? Like, I think that's something that I've encountered with a lot of creators who struggle with of I really want to say no, but I'm going to miss out or like I
Mm.
don't know, like how do you decide what to say no to and what to say yes to?
Well, it's been different throughout the years. Like before, I used to say yes to a lot of things that I felt were therapeutic.
Mm,
So the general idea was, do I believe in this product so I can hold on to the ethic of I really believe in this, let me let you know about it, which I still hold on to. However, I veered away from just clinical stuff or promoting clinical stuff, so um it's been pretty variable. Like I've gone as far as like partnering with a meditation cushion company, right?
mm,
Or Ali Brands was one of my favorite and most long-standing partnerships where they have a series of different gummies that help with different areas of mental wellness. And so in that time it was more about ethic. Now I really wonder what the corporate responsibility is that's being reflected by the organization, in
mhm,
addition to the ethical piece, in addition to making sure that I fully and wholeheartedly, unequivocally stand by a product.
okay.
Um, like I have this upcoming partnership, which is one of the first one in a long time. Before I used to like almost every month, every other week, even have a partnership on hand. And now it's like few and far in between. I take larger portions as my fee.
Mhm,
And I also, I take all those things I mentioned into consideration. But this partnership is a partnership in which the product itself proportions out 20% of its funds to health equity, which I'm a big proponent of. And it's a big mission of mine since the moment when I even applied to grad school. It's been a mission. So the fact that I can partner with a company for whom I have actually seen the tangible, actual programming that they have engaged in already, and the
mhm,
ways that they have already organized their funds around programming for youth and for the community, I feel really good about the partnership. Like I'm actually really excited to like get the video out, and I'm hoping that people can really hear the excitement in my message. Like that's the type of partnership that I want to be engaged with. And it also helps me to make sure that I'm like aligned with the mission of the brand, but also like, taking on less, but for more money, because the reality is that a lot of these brands have caught on to the fact that there are more influencers now and a lot of creators. And what
Hmm.
they're doing is that they're paying people a lot less than what they would have. And influencers are taking whatever they can get, and it's making it so that they're not getting what they're worth.
Yeah. 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 Are there any key questions that you've learned that you are going to ask anyone who wants to partner with you to sort of figure out if you are in alignment?
Yeah, I'll ask a question about their corporate responsibility for sure, like, or also like look it up in the messaging. But I also like with this upcoming partner, like I asked about explicitly, like, well, where are the funds going? Can I see a tangible
Good for you.
effect, right?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah, but they,
And I appreciate it. I think
hmm
I'm asking you to say it because I think that so many creators are, when they're looking at a corporation or a company, I think there's a lot of fear around really asking the tough questions and requiring evidence
hmm
of
hmm
it. Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
at this point, like I really, I've partnered with so many large brands. Like I really don't care who the brand is. Like
Yeah.
I am going to ask the questions that align with. I need to go to sleep at the end of the day and feel like I've shown up in a way that I'm proud,
Mhm.
and so yeah, so I asked those questions, and this brand was actually willing to send me a video. It was an insider's video, but of them actually training youth within marginalized communities around mental and physical health, so that they can go back into their community and be health ambassadors. It was such a beautiful, and I saw the video, I saw the kids, I saw, like it was just like
Powerful. Yeah.
powerful, tangible, real. And I'm gonna go speak to the kids this upcoming summer, so I'm being looped into the actual work. Like I love this stuff, and I'm doing the whatever I can to promote this health equity mission that I really believe in. So that's the thing, is that um, I can stand by a product like that, and when I put the work out there and people are like, oh gosh, hashtag ad,
Mm.
they can I can say, no, I believe in this for real. Like I
Yeah.
really, really do. And I don't have to feel shame or shy or like, wonder like who bought my soul,
Yeah.
any of those things.
Yeah. Well, and I have no doubt it will come through because it's coming through now. Your whole face lit up as you were
Mm-hmm.
talking about the work, and so it'll come through because
Yeah.
it's coming through now just in a casual conversation about it, so that's very
Yeah.
exciting. Um, I'm wondering if you have over the years established what your personal boundaries are with what you share online, and did you come into it with those in place, or was there a learning curve of trial and error around that?
Definitely trial and error. I think that's the case for a lot of us, right? I've seen that even the most boundaried people definitely have a thing or two that's still out there on the internet that they probably haven't been aware of the fact that they forgot to take it down. But I'm actually very private about my intimate relationships.
Okay.
I'm not explicit about that area of my life. I don't see where it has a place in my work. And so for me, that's always been a standard. But let me not say always, it's been a standard since I graduated my doctoral program.
Okay.
But before that, when I was still a student, I was posting about my then partner. And yeah, like elements of like who I choose to love or why or like things like that. Like I don't like, nor do I really follow, no shade, but accounts where it's like a couple or like it isn't one individual person.
Mm,
It's just a preference of mine. For me, I don't like to share that aspect of my life. I think also relationships are very variable. I'm a single woman, right? And so like whoever like is more like sustained in my life, like I want to preserve and protect that relationship.
mhm.
So for me, it matters to keep a certain element of privacy. But the the whole like following like accounts that are like, couples or couples goals. I being a therapist, I have been so um overexposed to the
Mm.
truths
Uh-huh.
that I'm like, it's all
Mm.
fake.
Yeah, smoke and mirrors over there. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, no,
And
yeah,
it's
it's
like,
good.
you're as a therapist that has high visibility. I've also like, I've worked with high profile clients and celebrity clients and a lot of people that have like these types of accounts, and it's just not what it seems. And I'm like, yeah, I don't like being fed untruths. I like authenticity, and I like what I like, and it's typically not, accounts that proclaim something, and if I know that something else is really there, then it's just I don't know, it doesn't feel good to me to
Yeah.
interact.
That's so interesting and such a niche thing to learn about yourself. Is there anything else that you've learned about yourself in part of the process of being a public figure? Anything that you've really been like, "Whoa, I didn't know that about myself," or, "Through this process, this became apparent to me," like anything
Mhm.
that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think I've been overexposed myself. Like I didn't
Mm,
realize that when I set out to do this work, I didn't realize that there would be a public figure element to it at all.
mm,
So I didn't realize that and even as an influencer or as a creator, I can't even count how many people have my personal information, my phone number,
yeah,
um, especially in my old address, not in my current address because I've been very explicit about not sharing it, but my old address, like so many people had my address because they would send me product. And like in 2024, I actually have a plan I've had my phone number for about 20 something years. I actually have a plan to change my phone number because there's
wow,
so many people that have it, and I just don't want that access anymore. Like sometimes I'll get, messages and I'm like, who is and why? And like, it's just so random how many people have my number that I feel like I desire greater privacy. And um, I have realized for myself that I hold certain people with such great value that I already have my circle, even the people that I've met through social media. I have those people, they're my circle. I don't want to overexpand because there are days when I'll get a message, an email, a text, and I don't have the capacity.
yeah,
There was one person who I actually connected with via their platform. They invited me on, and then they started like emailing me some of the mental health woes that they had. There have been people that I've been like on interviews with, and they've like been, you know, oh, it's almost felt like I was holding session for them. Like I'm very explicit about who has access now because I realized that in the moments when I actually burnt out, it was also because there was way too much of that. Too much content being produced, too many people actually having access to, just my time and energy, which is why I went so far in the direction of I want quiet, I want peace, I want, moments when I'm just staring at, the moon, and
your
I don't
lights.
I want my lights to like my soft lights and to
Yeah.
admire them, and I don't want to overindulge in, communication that doesn't have the depth that I know and desire, and from the people that I know are like have been my people for years, and are my, the people that hold me close.
Mhm, mhm. Super interesting, especially when I consider, you know, like, just even myself where I'm at, I'm like, I'm still so craving the someone reaching out to me. It's like, "Someone ask me something," you know what I mean? And so it's interesting to see, it's this is exactly why I do this, because I don't want to get to the point where I am, it's too much, and it's like, so
Mhm.
it's this is exactly why I do it, because it's the lessons learned from those who have been there before me, and I think, it's just a great, 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 point and lesson. Um,
Yeah. I used to actually look at people who were kind of like that, not in the nicest way. I used to be like, oh, so such a snob. Like,
What, like
okay,
the people that were like, don't call me? You mean like
yeah,
that? Yeah.
or like that would do that or say that not explicitly, but like um perhaps they might give you their number or you might get their email, but they would ghost you or like, things like
Right.
that. I've got it, it hasn't happened very often, but there have been some really prominent figures that were there before me whom I was like, oh my gosh. And then I like spoke with them or on a panel or whatever, and we exchanged details and they never responded.
Mm,
And I was like, okay, maybe we weren't going to be friends, like kind of
yeah.
feeling a little bit hurt by it. But now I'm like, oh, I get it.
Yeah. You more
Probably get
perspective.
that so much.
Right.
There was recently, I went somewhere and I remember being in a group, in a crowd of people. And this one person was like, oh, can I just take your number down? And I'm like, and I just didn't, I still struggle with saying no sometimes. And I didn't want to seem like,
Yeah.
rude.
Yeah.
Like, okay, sure. And then it just brought me right back to that thought, like, I need to change my number. And I need
Yeah.
to also like hold that boundary because what are we gonna, like,
Yeah.
why? Why do you
Yeah.
like email me or like,
Right. There's 1,000 ways to contact someone these days. Like, you don't need my personal cell phone number. Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
remember another time when I was like more proud of myself, where I was like, actually, like I'd rather like connect via the information on my website. You can just go on there and like you'll find my stuff. But the information on my website, it goes to my team. It doesn't go to me because I just it's just too overwhelming. The amount of emails, the amount of DMs. My DMs are actually they've been shut down for 2 years now because it was just too much.
Yeah.
It was every day, hundreds. It would be hundreds between emails, DMs. Um, there would be so many people that even people that would reply to my newsletter, there would be people that would like send me long emails of all the things that happened to
Mm,
them with explicit details of, abuse. And I was like, oh my goodness.
yeah. Yeah. It's a lot.
I'm like, I'm only one person, y'all, and to hold all of this is a
Yeah.
lot. And I don't think people just see like, oh, she's a therapist, she got it.
Right.
But they forget like, yeah, but I'm still holding the minds and stories of the people that I work with profoundly. I hold my own, I hold my family's. And then I also read the comments in my accounts, but I can't sit here and read an entire like 2-page email about everything that's transpired in your life. It's not fair. And
100%.
so now I'm just like, you know what? I'm just not going to read it, even though I wish I could.
Yeah.
But for my own self-preservation, it's going to be essential to hold the boundary.
Yeah. And I have to say, I have only had, a couple of exchanges with your team, but they're excellent. Like,
Oh,
they're a pleasure to work with. And from someone who comes from like small business owners, my mom has also had a podcast and has been doing very similar work to you in the sense of like the different branches and all the people that and all the ends that come together. It is I really give you a lot of credit because it's one thing to have people on your team. It's another thing to have the right people. And they've really been a joy to work with. So I mean, they're wonderful, but I credit it to you for just knowing what you need and who you need it from. They've been very easy and nice and
oh,
pleasant and on it. They're just on it. It's like
oh.
really great. So I
Oh,
appreciate that.
I'm happy to hear it.
I only have you for another couple of minutes here. What occurs to me as too is that so many of us, I think, just culturally and in this world, like the goal always has this overarching theme of like keep growing, keep getting bigger, keep doing more things. And it seems like you've said a few times, you want more quiet, you want more peace, you want more balance. Like where do you see it going? Like where do you see these platforms and all of your reach going if you're desiring more peace? Like how do you keep growing it and spreading the message but then I don't know, like where do you see it going? Do you see like closing up shop? Like I don't know. Like what do you see
I
happening here?
wish. Oh, that makes me so happy to think about. I wish, I wish. My team won't let me, but I wish I could. What I do desire will happen is that I will stick to my ideas of like where I need to migrate to. I
Okay.
really wholeheartedly just
Just
like,
like getting clear on it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love my newsletter. I want to, have more of a focus there. My newsletter means a lot to me, and it's one that has a lot of intention. You know, um, the places where I feel like this feels good to me, like I want to migrate there.
Okay.
And, maybe it is going to be a very revolutionary thing to do to say, I've built community here, but it's not good for my health and I need to migrate out. And, or that I need to just provide those platforms with less of me.
Okay. That makes
Hmm.
sense. That makes sense. Okay. So I see it behind you. It's gorgeous. When is your book coming out? Tell us a little bit about your book
Hmm.
and what we can expect from it and all the good things.
Thank you. Yeah, it's called Break the Cycle, A Guide to Healing Intergenerational Trauma. And it's a book that is, in essence, that it's a guide, a comprehensive way in which a person can dive into how they can start healing the generational wounds that have been in their family line for years. And it is situated on a holistic framework, which is how I work. I'm a holistic psychologist and someone who infuses meditation and breath work and different kinds of practices that are also essential for our mental well-being into my own therapeutic process and protocol with clients and also in the book. And so it's reflective of a lot of those practices. And so it comes out January 2nd, which is, as my sister reminded me, right around the corner. And oh my
Oh,
goodness,
yeah.
I cannot believe it. But it is out for pre-order now, and out for order January 2nd.
Very, very exciting. Are you
Hmm.
doing a book tour and all that? Like, because that's a whole other
Yeah.
that's gearing up too, your
It
face.
is. Yeah.
You're like, "Uh-huh, I am."
Well, I plan to rest in February. My hope is that I can just take the month.
Okay.
But January is jam-packed, given that that's the pub week and pub month. But yeah, right now I'm working with my team to like secure something in New Jersey, in the Montclair area, which is exciting because it's right next to where I live. And there is a New York book talk that I'm organizing for Publishing Week and also LA. So I will have, a little baby tour,
Good.
but I think it's about as much as my energy allows.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, well, I will link, the pre-order because this will probably come out just right before it comes out. So
Mhm.
I'll, have that link in the show notes. Dr. Marielle, is there anything that you wish I would have asked you today that I didn't, or anything lingering on your heart, mind, or soul that you wanna make sure to leave people with today?
Yeah, I would say, definitely make sure that you look to the people that feel aligned with like who you want to be on these social spaces. I have found such awesome friends. And like I said, they've been there for years and they're like my core group. And like now I'm just like, I'm a little bit more boundaried about who has access. But I do believe that there are amazing people out there that we can build community with. So just, the boundaried element of the work can come, maybe after you build a little solid community and like see who your people are. And there's definitely people out there for everybody.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so, so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure talking to you. Thank you.
Likewise. Likewise. Thank you.
Wow, wow, wow. What a value packed conversation from such a successful online presence, person, wonderful soul. You heard Dr. Marielle. Everything she does with intention. Even the vibe of her Instagram page that is so joyful, she strives to be grounded and portrays that in everything she does. Today, she offered so many great tips for mental health professionals who want to create an online presence, but I say these tips will work for anyone who wants to grow an online community. Some of these tips are ones that we've heard time and time again. One of them in particular is authenticity. Dr. Marielle said that being authentic in our content doesn't just allow us to connect to our community, but it also continues to nurture the relationship and allows our communities to evolve with us. And think about yourself as a consumer. When you notice that someone you follow is genuine and has good intentions and shares what's going on, you definitely connect with them more. Even when you see their flaws, as long as you know and trust that they're coming from a good place, it builds trust between yourself and who you're watching. And the same goes from the opposite point of view. So like I said, it reminds me of episode 194 with Maddie Spear, another mental health professional who knows the importance of connecting with our communities. When you're authentic in your content, you will be more visible and you will attract the people that you want to attract. Something that Dr. Mariel reminded us was that as content creators, we tend to forget about ourselves and what makes us feel good. I say this a lot, but people think doing this is easy, and it isn't. It isn't always fun and can lead to burnout. And even though we're so tempted to take over all of the platforms and be as visible as possible, it's just too much. I'm sure there are people out there who nail it, who can be on every platform and it doesn't faze them. But that's not most of us. And it's okay to stick to platforms that make us feel good when we create for them. There will probably be some trial and error involved in that process, which I hate, but it is worth it when you can know that you've tried a platform and didn't work for you and can put that chapter to bed. Just close it up, move on, and stick to the ones that work. Dr. Mariel has learned to migrate those platforms to the ones that make her feel her best. And I know that this can be hard. And so I commend her for doing this because as creators, not only do we want visibility, but we want to help. And therefore, we want to reach as many people as we can. But we also have to remember that perhaps our message isn't best received on every platform. And then it's kind of like, well, what's the point? We all know there's different vibes on different platforms. For Dr. Mariel, she gets joy from TikTok and Instagram, but she kind of gets the ick from YouTube. And this kind of ties into her final point of the episode. She says to stick with what and who you are aligned with. So I'm going to encourage you to do some self-reflection. Where does your content feel like it resonates well? What platform do you enjoy creating for? What content do you create that makes you feel good? Does your community respond differently? Take a look at this over the next couple of weeks. And if you're interested in purchasing Dr. Mariel's book, Break the Cycle, A Guide to Healing Intergenerational Trauma, it will be available on January 2nd, but you can pre-order it now. The link is right in the show notes. You're going to want to get this book. I'm so grateful that Dr. Mariel took her time to be with us and share her insights and wisdom. I'm so looking forward to reading her book. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks so much for listening. This podcast is a production of Luann Nigara, Inc. To learn more about me, my world, all the things going on, head over to ChristyRocha.com. Bye.